In terms of background, there were some pipe stems found at the base of the cliff, which is how they originally identified the site, and then the county had a phase 1 done. And a phase 1 is where you dig shovel test pits about this big and screen through and see what you find. It's primarily for identification and figure out where the artifact densities are. So they dug shovel test pits at 25 foot the whole way through this area to identify how far the site extended. They also did some metal detecting. And then they hired us to come out and do the phase 2, a little more exploratory, open up wider apertures, try and see what's going on subsurface. So we started with this excavation unit and this one over here, because these were the highest density areas were from shovel tests right around here and just north of that. So this was almost a little bit of a void. So we had one that had a little bit less in the middle, and a lot of times what you want to look for is the area where there aren't artifacts, because assuming there was a structure here in this area, the things were being thrown outside of the structure. So we want to try to straddle that boundary. So we still get a lot of artifacts that tell us something about the site, but hopefully get something subsurface that can tell us about what was actually here. Normally what you would expect to see underneath the plow zone in this type of setting is subsoil. And subsoil is usually it's clay rich, it's a little more, it's usually more red to yellow in color. And that's never been a living surface. That's usually where we stop. But instead what we came down on is a darker surface, and you can still see there's brick and charcoal flecking through the top. So we would call that like a buried A or a buried cultural horizon. And it's fairly deep. We took the split spoon and probed it, and there's another 15 to 18 inches of cultural bearing horizon underneath the plow zone. So the next thing we did was we took the split spoon, which is probably over there. It's basically an auger, but it's only like a 1/2 inch auger, so you're not disturbing much, but you can probe down to about 3 feet and get an idea of what the soil profile is going to look like. So we did that. You'll see some of these orange flags. We did that every 5-10 feet going back and away from this area to try to find out where this stopped, where we were no longer hitting this cultural layer and where we would be able to reach subsoil. Because what we really want is the edge of this to try and get some idea of what it actually is. Is it infilling? Is it like a large midden? Is it, we're not sure yet, but we got to find an edge to be able to follow it out. So we figured you place a unit here and we're able to straddle that boundary and see where it breaks. So if you look down in here at the kind of the plan view, this is the base of excavation. On this side, you have subsoil that's intact and culturally sterile, and then here you can see the dark stain and the brick. This is the edge of possibly a related feature to this, or it could be something else. We're pretty far away, but either way, all the probes the whole way here, we weren't getting any subsoil. So this little bit of it, we're not sure. We would have to, at a later stage, we'd excavate this out separately and see how the profile, see if it bowls, if it cuts straight down, how it moves, and then kind of follow it to try and figure out what was going on here in the 17th century. In terms of artifacts and the dating for this site is remarkably intact. We don't have any modern intrusion, really. A lot of times it's stuff from the 17th century. You're going to end up finding it mixed in with 19th century, with 20th century trash, things on the surface. We don't have that here. Almost everything that we have is predominantly 17th century. A pipe bowl. We have a lot of pipe stems, but out of that unit we got a few. So this is the pipe stem. We also have some pre-contact materials. The arrowheads, we call them projectile points, but people hunt them and collect them and they take them out of the context. In this case, we're really trying to find out who was actually occupying this. But a lot of what we're finding, we have a lot of brick, we have a lot of some historic ceramic, not in this batch necessarily, but nicer things like tin glazed earthenwares and like North Devon, and for the time they're expensive ceramics, which you would expect prominent families to own.
There was something constructed here of brick, probably not a superstructure, but something ancillary. And again, brick manufacture is expensive, especially at this time. So that tells us that the people who were living here, they had means at that time.
And there is the aspect that it could be heirlooming and things like that, could be handed down, but it doesn't fit the time period of everything else that we're finding. Everything seems solidly 17th century. So it's still a little bit of a mystery, but that I think one that out here is really only going to be solved with the archaeology, because we haven't found much in the historic record. Because of the erosion, the site is in danger of being lost. And to find a 17th century site that is entirely intact and hasn't been disturbed by modern development or by later occupations even, really, that is capped and sealed purely 17th century is rare.
Organic materials like bone, fish scale, fish bone, we'd have to get into features, probably subsurface features, for there to be a little bit more preservation, because the freeze-thaw cycle and the plow zone affects that a lot as well. So in order to get that organic preservation, that's when we start to understand like their eating patterns seasonally, what they eat, each season, and what they were consuming on site. That gives us some idea of what that is, but preservation right now in these layers is going to be not as good as it will be if we can find some deeper subsurface features, and like that one over there, and get into those at a later stage. Then we take samples and we actually put them into a flotation machine, and the organic materials float and the heavy fraction sinks. We skim off the organic material, and that's where we're finding things like fish scales, fish bones, even calcified bone and things like that. It gives us an idea of their diet.